Joining me now are John Fugelsang, a comedian, SiriusXM host, and best-selling New York Times best-selling author, and Max Rose, former Democratic congressman from New York and a senior advisor for Vote Vets. So, Max, we just heard from Oliver Larkin, who is challenging current Democratic Congressman Jared Moskowitz from the left. Larkin is a DSA candidate. DSA candidates have had kind of a mixed record so far in this primary season. There have been some very high-profile wins, a lot of losses. What do you think the likely outcome is in that race?
Larkin's going to lose by more than 25 points. Everybody knows that this is going to happen, to include Larkin himself, which begs the question, why did he ever do this in the first place? Most likely it's to promote himself. What I would say we should be focusing on, though, is the fact that this is an R+7-ish district at this point, that Moskowitz, the presumptive Democratic nominee, has an extraordinary chance of winning and holding on to. The reason why it's an R+7 with a Democratic incumbent is because of this Florida gerrymandering effort. Yes. That's what we should be focusing on right now. We need to win those hard seats, retain those hard seats as Democrats, so we can flip the House and make Hakeem Jeffries Speaker.
I would just add, having a Democratic socialist in the primary allows a lot of issues, including health care for all, that might not be raised, to get out there in the zeitgeist. And it lets Moskowitz sell himself even more as a moderate, which will help him as soon as the primary is over.
So speaking of potentially flipping certain offices, as I mentioned in the last segment, the Republican primary to replace Florida Governor Ron DeSantis has been totally nuts.
Yes.
You have the Trump-endorsed candidate Byron Donalds. You have this bigoted guy James Fishback, and Donalds, of course, has embraced the anti-weaponization fund.
Let's be fair. Donalds is bigot too. He's a bigot as well. Come on now.
Okay, if you say so. Florida has not actually had a Democratic governor that it elected in over 30 years, since I was a child growing up in Florida. And so my question to you is, given this sort of clown car of candidates who are running on the Republican ticket, is this the chance for David Jolly, who's running as the Democrat, to actually finally turn that governor's mansion blue?
A lot will depend on who the Republicans pick, I think.
Well, who's the good one?
Who's as a comedian or as a civic society? It's hard to say. I mean, Byron Donalds is like the guy you'd buy weed from and then watch him put other men in jail for selling weed, isn't he? So there's that. David Jolly gets to come out there and say, I'm not a radical. I was a Republican. And then I looked around and saw what was going on. Their entire MO is selling the Democratic Party as communist, radical, groomer, transgender, lunatic. And by having a former Republican there, that will help in ways that having someone on the left wouldn't. It's all going to come down to which unqualified clown the Republicans pick for their nominee. And then the big factor will be how many MAGAs just stay home like they did in 22 and 18.
Yeah. Excellent questions. Well, you are both, Max Rose and John Fugelsang, staying with me.
All right.
We've got lots more to talk about, because coming up, we're going to talk about how Donald Trump and Todd Blanche today said that anyone who attacks police officers will be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. But they may be forgetting one significant decision that this president made. And later on, a historical preservation project to counter disinformation made up of more than 17,000 pictures from Americans across the country. Stay with us. Earlier today, President Trump touted his perceived record on crime and safety. Perceived by himself, if no one else. But one specific remark is getting a lot of attention, as is another curious comment from his newly installed Attorney General and former personal lawyer, Todd Blanche. Watch.
Together, we're showing what is possible when you finally have a president in the White House who supports our police, who lets you do your jobs, and who always backs the blue. We back the blue.
In my Department of Justice, if anybody touches a federal law enforcement officer in any way inappropriate, we will prosecute them to the fullest extent of the law.
So those comments seem a little bit at odds with President Trump's actual track record, considering that he pardoned over 1,500 people involved in the January 6th insurrection, including a couple hundred of people who actually themselves pleaded guilty to assaulting law enforcement officers. Not only that, but Trump and Blanche haven't given up on their desire to pay what they call victims of government weaponization. Back with me now are former New York Congressman Max Rose and SiriusXM host John Fugelsang. So, Max, Senate Democrats are accusing Blanche and the DOJ of using kind of a workaround for this anti-weaponization fund that right now is supposed to be dormant, basically by pulling funds out of Treasury's judgment fund. MSNOW reports that the senators pointed to a $4.9 million settlement agreement with the estate of Ashley Babbitt, who was killed inside the Capitol after storming the building and trying to breach the House chamber on January 6th, 2021. A $1.25 million settlement with Michael Flynn, who served as national security advisor in Trump's first administration, a $1 million settlement with Mark Houck, an anti-abortion activist, and a $1.25 million agreement to settle with former Trump campaign advisor Carter Page. That's a blast from the past. So what do you make of all of this? Like, I don't understand why he's still doing these payouts.
Yeah.
What does he have to gain from them?
His entire political life is based around vengeance and a vindictive mindset. But I'm a bit torn here because I feel two things that are in some ways, conflicting. And I feel like many Democrats feel this way. One, the oversight and the moral North Star that leaders like Adam Schiff are demonstrating right now is so important. On the same hand, I cannot wait till January 21st, 2029, when the Republicans see what we will do as Democrats when we have the White House, when we set up our own settlement fund, but this time to pay back the people who lost their lives, their livelihoods from this Trump meme coin that were defrauded by the President of the United States. When they see our Attorney General, unlike the prior Democratic Attorney General, be just as political as their Attorney General, is not just standing at rallies, but actually fully prosecuting the people, to include the President himself, who deserve that level of prosecution. We have to take some notes here about not just being these technocratic normies, but using all the tools at our disposal.
Well, I think I would avoid characterizing it as having a political AG. I think you want to frame it, at least I would hope, as a society, we want to frame it as returning to rule of law, rather than returning to or maintaining the sort of political retribution aspect of it.
There are those of us who would like to see Attorney General Jack Smith scare the fascists back into their hole for a few generations.
Amen.
But based on the law and based on evidence that people actually
based on thuggery being expensive, based on sedition being expensive, based on this kind of authoritarianism not being worth it. Make racists embarrassed again.
If following the rule of law is what Merrick Garland did, I don't want to go back to that. Okay? What we want is to not be what they're doing right now. The reason why the Republicans keep on doing this is because they think the Democrats won't respond when we have power. They think we're so normie and so kind of technocratic that we will just not do anything that rocks the boat.
I think that, and I'm rooting for the Democrats.
Well, those days, we can't go back to it. We can't go back to it. I'm sorry. I don't care about precedent. I don't care about morality. I don't care about norms. I care about scaring the hell out of the other side so they never do this again.
Well, I think there's a difference between scaring the hell out of the other side for breaking the law or engaging in corruption or things like that. And scaring them straight versus framing it again as this is a political retribution campaign.
We just saw a bunch of cops cheering a convicted felon in the Epstein files who was telling them that America's been too soft on crime. That's what we just watched. And what we're witnessing here are the end stages of January 6th, aren't we? The thugs got pardoned, the flunkies get payouts, and the cops who were beaten for Trump's lies are being told they need to move on.
Yeah. Well, I want to return to rule of law. That's
Me
how
too.
that's how I would frame it.
I mean,
Again.
at least Mussolini did this in private, you know, like Putin's watching the slush fund.
I don't want
at least have a shell company, Trump.
Yeah,
at least.
I don't want a mirror image of Trump from the left. That's
Not
my
at all,
fear.
and I
That
don't
there's
think
going to be an appetite, like
I don't
hold people accountable, but you needed to have some legitimacy around.
You couldn't have a Trump on the left. It doesn't exist.
Oh, I beg to differ.
Well,
this will have to be a conversation we continue another time. This is a very interesting debate. Thank you so much, Max Rose and John Fugelsang. Coming up, tonight's Nightlight is a Minnesota librarian who's making sure those in power do not leave us in the dark. When Donald Trump returned to office, his administration quickly got to work erasing records and facts that happened to be inconvenient to the MAGA agenda. The erasure began in the digital world with the removal of government websites, data series on things like climate change. But it soon spread to the physical world as the federal government began removing and revising signs in national parks and historic sites. They rewrote a plaque outside the White House about a protest that was key in the movement for women's suffrage. They replaced an exhibit about slavery at the Philadelphia home of George Washington. They took down the pride flag at Stonewall. But changing these websites and historical sites doesn't change the history behind them, especially when ordinary Americans step in where the government is failing. One of those Americans was Jenny McCurry, a government publications librarian at the University of Minnesota. In 2025, after hearing about this dystopian effort, she co-founded Save Our Signs, which aims to create an online record of historical signs at national park sites in the event that the Trump administration alters or removes them. McBurney told the news site the 19th, quote, "If people go to these sites and expect to see the full history, not seeing that, then that is a missed opportunity for so many people, especially with the quiet changes on the signs where you can't even tell that something has been changed. They think that they're hearing the whole story, and they're not, and that's not fair to them." Americans across the country are now stepping up. As of this month, Save Our Signs, quote, has compiled 17,236 photos, including at least one in nearly every national park or historic site in the country. They allow viewers to make before and after comparisons, which, allows them to see which signs were removed completely, which ones were revised heavily, and which ones were more subtly reworded. Legal challenges to these changes are still up in the air. McBurney says that regardless of what happens going forward, quote, are still up in the air. McBurney says that regardless of what happens going forward, quote, the Save Our Signs archive is this really valuable resource of a snapshot in time of what was happening in our country. And it can be used as a tool that people use to try to understand the kind of sense